Matrescence. Welcome to Season 4 of Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boat, and this season we're stepping fully into our power. The heat, the hormones, the heartbreak, the healing. This is Midlife, raw and redefined. Each episode, you'll hear stories of humans who are rewriting the rules, reclaiming their bodies, their desires, their voices. This is where we stop shrinking, start shining, and remember who the hell we are. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's an awakening. Let's get transforming 45. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. On this show, we talk about identity a lot, and we talk about motherhood a lot, but it's been a while since we've taken some time to really intentionally talk about those two things together. And it's one of the themes that runs through my story, and I know it is one of the themes that is absolutely running through my guest story this week. So Ashley, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here today. Ashley is a motherhood and self-development coach who supports women through the various transitions of motherhood, meeting her clients at the intersection of their careers, their mothering, and themselves. She is a certified executive coach, matrescence educator, and mom of two. Ashley is passionate about maternal mental health and rewriting the narrative of motherhood, talking about what really matters and what moms are really dealing with. Outside of coaching and mothering, Ashley is also an educator with almost 20 years of classroom experience. Same, sister. Love of yoga, hiking, good coffee, and peanut butter. Yes, me too. Ashley, I am so glad that you are here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, obviously we have a lot in common.
We do. It's so funny. When I saw the peanut butter line, it made me laugh because my boys always make fun of me because I am I'm such a creature of habit.
Mhm.
And every morning it's tea, smoothie, and toast with peanut butter and honey. It has been since I was a kid. It continues to this day. And it's just, there's something so deeply nourishing about that on
Yes.
all of the levels. Anyway, I'm glad you also love peanut butter.
Can I just ask what kind of peanut butter?
Yes. So natural peanut butter with that's crunchy.
Okay.
Yes. How about you?
Any and all. Yeah, my
So-
favorite is Adams though. Adams peanut butter. It's natural peanut butter. Crunchy, smooth. Love it all.
Yeah. So growing up, my mom was very health conscious and we didn't have any food in the house really that was processed. And so I didn't have Kraft peanut butter until I went to camp, and it would come in the little
Yes.
plastic square packages. And I would just open those suckers up and eat them like with a spoon or with my finger because it's so good. And I, modeling my mother's, influence, also only have natural peanut butter in the house. But it's a treat when you get some Kraft peanut butter.
We call it treat peanut butter. And yeah, same with you at camp. I would take those little packs and then a sleeve of soda crackers back to my cabin. And that's what I would snack on. And actually was written in my camper file that I ate too much peanut butter.
The things we wrote about in the 80s and 90s. That's great.
Ashley needs to diversify her meal selections. Well, yeah, I eventually grew up, but I still love peanut
butter. That's so funny. Okay, so aside from being a peanut butter lover, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
Such a great question. And I've been reflecting on this because I knew it was coming. And I'm often the one giving this question and find it so hard to answer because you do want to default to your roles. But I think who I am now, I can confidently say that I am a highly sensitive person, a deeply feeling person. And it's taken me a while, I think, to come to those conclusions. Motherhood has certainly shaped that journey for me. And it has made my life incredibly fulfilling, allowed me to follow a lot of my passions and make decisions from my heart as opposed to logic and reason, which sometimes we do need to do away with. But it also means that I get hurt easily and there's a lot of self-doubt that I have to manage and self-criticism. So yeah, I would say that's who I am at this version of me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I resonate with a lot of that as well. Are there specific or either specific events that happened or just themes that you've noticed that allowed you to come to a place where you felt one, knew that you were highly sensitive, and then was able to make peace with it?
The highly sensitive piece is something that's honestly a recent discovery, I would say. And when I've said it to certain people that have known me a long time, they're like, well, obviously. I'm like, well, this is news to me. Okay. Just let me. But I think I love personal growth. I love self discovery in myself, but also others. I love talking about it. I don't know. So I think I've gone through different iterations of what that process looks like for me. So I don't think there's any one specific thing that has led to that. I think it's a series of things. Certainly the piece that probably played the largest role has been motherhood for me. When I look back, so my kids are 11 and 7. When I look back to those early versions of myself, I barely recognize her. I was so filled with doubt, questioning everything, looking for all of the answers outside of myself, trying to, follow sleep schedules from a certain book, feeding from a certain practice, and not asking myself what felt right or what my kid actually needed. It was all like, well, let's test this theory and this practice, and this person told me that, so I should try that. And I think motherhood has been the one thing that you can't just turn away from it and try something else. So it has kept coming back and kept coming back and kept coming back, and continue to have to ask myself the hard questions in order to face those challenges. And I think has really been had the biggest impact. And with each child and with each of their transitions, it brings up new things in me as well. So, trying to think of an example, like, yeah, my daughter, she's 11, she's in those preteen stage. And as she's going into adolescence, I'm remembering a lot of my own adolescence and how brings up those experiences for me. And I'm now at the stage where I can say, you know what, this piece of how it was dealt with when I was an adolescent are okay, but these ones I want to rewrite and I want to do things differently. But it also comes with some grief, I think, too. We know that I think the way I was raised in the 80s, and, you were given a book or you were learned about adolescence in school, and that was how you learned. And that's just how it was. It's to no fault of anyone, but it left a lot of question marks. I think girls of the 80s, 90s, you were either given a leaflet or you were taught a few things in health class, but that was pretty much the extent of what you learned.
Or we watched Degrassi Junior High.
Also
if you're
that.
Canadian.
Yes. Excellent content there. Yeah. And so you're left to figure it out on your own. And that has really impacted how I want to show up for my daughter and rewrite that experience for myself through her. But that has also come with some grief, I think, of letting go of what wasn't my experience, although I had no control over that. It has left me certainly sad at times and grieving what I didn't get to have, which led to, lack of self-confidence and feeling pretty icky about myself and my body for a long time.
So when you were talking about your daughter being, sort of preteen, what I wanted to say was, this is a part of the conversation where parents who have older kids would say, well, and just wait until they're teenagers. But I actually really want to shift that narrative because, yes, there are big dynamic changes that happen in that relationship. And when we have set the foundation for our young humans seeing us as just older humans, it's a really great way to be able to navigate that teenage relationship in a way that doesn't necessitate that line of just waited till they're teenagers. And I also will preface this by saying everyone's experience is different. And sometimes, no matter what we do as parents, our child's story is going to be their story. And sometimes, as much as we try to protect them and support them in as many ways as they can, they choose a story that's hard. And we wish that was different, and it's not sometimes. And so I think, when you talk about grief, all of those pieces are so important because we think about there's grief in my changing life stage and what that
Mhm.
means about how I'm moving through my life. It means missing my small humans sometimes.
Mhm.
There's grief in that, I miss their sweet little voices, and I miss their chubby little hands and feet, and there's grief in some stories around the story not unfolding the way that you thought it would. And one of the best, sagest piece of advice my mom gave me, and I didn't have her long in my mothering journey, but shortly after Will was born, I was right on the edge of postpartum depression for lots of reasons, like the hormonal fluctuations, obviously, but I also really struggled to breastfeed, and it turns out I just didn't have the tissue that produced breast milk. And the first time and so in the hospital, Will was dropping weight really quickly, and we had to supplement, and I felt so much grief and shame that I couldn't
Yeah.
even do this one simple thing, that my mom actually was the first one to give him a bottle, and I couldn't even be in the room because I was so overwhelmed by the shame and the
Mm.
guilt of not being able to do that and the grief of it. But what it led her saying to me eventually was, "Lisa, you cannot protect your kids from everything," because I was so wrapped up in this, like, if I do this, they'll be safe. And then I also was doing things like locking every door in the house. Like, I was terrified that something was going to happen. I was constantly checking on him during the night. It's such a simple phrase, right? You can't protect them from everything. But it was so contrary to the narrative of you have to protect them from everything that it really stuck with me. And it ended up giving me a significant amount of freedom,
Mhm.
actually, in my parenting. In that, yes, I want to love and support them and keep them as safe as I can. And they are humans living on this planet that is inherently risky. And actually can't protect them from everything. And that gave myself some space, and it gave them some space as well. Yeah.
That's a really, really powerful lesson. And yeah, something that it's amazing that you were able to take that in and see that. I think, especially in those early days, because our brains are rewiring at that point to be able to adapt to not just protecting ourselves, but protecting another human. And I think that falls under this umbrella term of matrescence, which is, I think a lot of people don't know this word, but it is the word that describes all of the changes that happen in a woman's body, mind, spirit, soul as they go through motherhood. And so one of those is the neurological changes that you're talking about, which creates this heightened anxiety. But that's a primal protective reflex that needs to happen. But sometimes it can be overwhelming and scary and lead you to think and have those thoughts, hey, I need to do everything I can to protect my children. But the reality is, there's nuance to everything, and it's just not possible.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's one of the most challenging realizations to come up against,
Mm.
because when you are holding this, tiny little being, and yeah, everything in your heart, mind, body, soul turns on to just want to keep them safe. I'm not the first person to say, suddenly your heart exists outside of your body. So you're trying to hold them and protect them, while at the same time, and while they're that infant, like, that is your reality. Like, they
Yeah,
literally can't do anything for themselves,
yeah.
and
They
that is our yeah, that is our role at that time, is to keep them alive. And as they get older, that role shifts, and it is this constant interplay and dance between their identity and mine. And so when you were talking about your own experiences as a preteen and a teen, and I think this is another piece that we don't talk enough about, is that how much our own experiences are pulled to the surface by watching our kiddos go through it.
Mhm.
And if we take it as an opportunity of examining what our experience was and what the influences were, then we can have some big growth out of that. And if we don't, it can be really limiting to the relationship. So I'm interested to hear about your reflections around what are the pieces that formed your identity at that stage? And what are the pieces that you think, yeah, I want to have conversation with my kiddo about that. And I hope that they have some of these influences. And I want to have conversation with them around these pieces. And I hope that their reality is different.
I think that's the constant dance that you're playing. Um, and I think that through my coaching, that's what I'm trying to do with my clients is help them to bring up those stories from their past that are impacting the decisions and the choices that they're making. And when you bump up against some tension in your parenting and your mothering, it's likely a result of a disconnect between the experience you had and maybe some unresolved feelings about that and your child's experience. And as you say, them needing to go through it in their own way. Yes, they are come from you or a part of you, but they are their own unique being. And just because you had an awful experience in a certain time of your life doesn't mean they're going to as well, and doesn't mean you need to do the opposite in order to make sure they don't. It's very much, again, going back to that early version of me as a mom, looking for the answers in a book or in some kind of magical unicorn space, how to get my child to sleep. It, the answer was always just in me and in my child. You know what? Maybe they're not sleeping because they're hungry. Maybe I need to listen to the different cries. I don't know. I can't remember exactly, but I wish that I had tuned into myself a lot more and cut out the noise. That's not easy, but that's what I want to rewrite, that narrative that it's okay to be talking about these things. It's okay to have those feelings. That is a part of the experience. And the more we talk about it, the more we normalize these experiences as part of motherhood. And they're not something to be ashamed of. They're not something we have to, carry, bury deep down all by ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You're right. There is so much noise, right? There are so many influences that come into your world as a human of an infant, of young humans. There are books and there's articles and there's podcasts, and now more than ever, probably access to more information than we can possibly process. A lot
Yeah.
of it is contraindicating. And I think what you said is so wise about really tuning into yourself and this young human who is in front of you. I remember one of my girlfriends when she first had her little one. It was about 3 weeks in. She was like,
Mhm.
"Lisa, I can't control her." I was like, "Yeah, no, you can't." That's
Yeah.
how it is with it. That's how it is with an infant. But I think there's so much, especially with social media, there's so much of these conceived ideas of what this time of motherhood is supposed to be, that it is supposed to be all joy. It is supposed to be all, these brilliant things. But I remember with the same friend before she had had kids and I had just given birth to Will. I think I was maybe 6 weeks in. And I remember they came over for dinner and she and I were in the living room. And I was like, this was not a good idea. I don't know whoever said that like parenting was a good idea. It's not. This was a bad idea. And it's okay to have those feelings.
Mhm.
It's okay to grieve the woman that you were and the life that you had. All of those things are very deeply intermingled, and that doesn't mean that you don't love this human, that you aren't glad that even though it's really hard that this experience is happening, but it's being able to hold both of those truths at the same time. When we can let ourselves actually experience that, the holding two opposite truths at the same time, the better it is for staying connected to our actual truth, our actual
Mhm.
reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think what you're speaking of is that duality. I can find this hard and love my child with every fiber of my being.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When I said this was a bad idea, it didn't mean I actually wanted to return Will to where it came, where to whence he came
Yeah.
from. But I was totally acknowledging that it was It was really hard. And there are so many ways that we disconnect from the truth of ourselves as we move through mother. And so, in the stage that you are in and that you're supporting women through, I think it's so key to be having these conversations so that you have some techniques and strategies and places to talk about like these real truths so that you stay connected. Because women and, I'm a little bit older than you and my kids are a little older. So we've been like, I'm on the other side of this. And so many are completely disconnected from themselves. So when we hit the empty nest stage, there is an identity crisis of who am I? What am I supposed to do now? And what is the rest of my life going to look like? So, what are some of those conversations you're having with younger mothers to help them keep those connections to themselves so that they don't end up with this massive crisis?
I think that's the work. That is, and each person's approach to doing that is going to be unique to them. For me, that is a constant ongoing process of just when I think that I'm connected to myself, something else happens and I realize, oof, I've got another layer to unpeel here. And yeah, I'm thinking just this year I went through a fairly scary experience with my kids, a skiing incident, and it brought up a lot. I didn't realize how that experience just had many layers to it. Everyone was safe, everyone was fine in the end, but I couldn't get past it. And it was having a huge impact on my mental health, my ability to cope. And it wasn't until I really acknowledged what that experience was bringing up for me as I tried to protect my kids and no help was around, that I was able, like, that acceptance was like another layer of the onion that I peeled away that has allowed me to kind of let go of some pieces of my past in order to show up better for my kids right now and for myself. But how did I get there? I don't know. I don't know how to really explain it. It's not
Yeah.
like a one size fits all.
No.
It was months, I guess, some therapy, a lot of yoga. I do a lot of yoga, just reflection and conversation. But I think that's going to keep happening. It's an ongoing iterative process. And to think that it's a destination, like even you saying you're on the other side, but you're just at a different stage.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's still more for to come for you. And so when the question you asked is how do I have those conversations with my clients? It's really about figuring out what works for them or where they're at right now and what do they need to get to that next stage.
And there
Mhm.
is so much of that onion to peel back. And at this particular time in history, we are inundated by messaging around what it looks like to be a mother, and there are impossibly high standards around perfection and what that looks like, what it feels like, what we talk about in a way that just I don't know has existed prior to now. Like the Gen X conversation often starts with the like, yeah, our parents sent us out all day. We were out roaming the streets. They were hanging out, having a good time. And then the TV had to, I don't remember this so much in Canada, but there had to be a message on the TV at like 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. Where are your kids? So
Yeah.
within a generation, there has been a significant shift. And
Mhm.
as both mothers and educators, and I want to navigate this conversation gently because I'm not trying to create blame or shame, but it is a conversation that I think is really important to have. There has been a massive shift toward children more than ever being
Mhm.
an extension of you and your
Mhm.
identity. And what I mean by that is we want to make everything as perfect for this young human as it possibly could be. Part of that is like trying to heal our own childhood
Mhm.
wounds. It also means trying to keep up that illusion of perfection, that everything about me and my life is perfect, so everything about my child is perfect.
Mhm.
And so when someone And I can be very specific around my own experiences of, as an educator, if I had some feedback for a parent around what was happening with their kid, and they're in that space of trying to curate perfection, and someone is saying, hey, like there's something we need to look at with this young human, the response becomes defense rather than problem solving. And I feel like that really is where we are at this juncture, where there is this big divide between us and them, be it, educators and parents or older family members and younger family members. Whatever your dynamic is, there's this us and them rather than a sense of community. And I'm wondering how you are perceiving that playing out with the people you're supporting.
Yeah, I mean, certainly what you're describing, this perfect motherhood myth, is actually a term that was coined by Dr. Sophie Brock. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her and her work, but fantastic resources. She's a sociologist and she specializes in talking about the sociology of motherhood. So it's brilliant looking at the context within which we are mothering, the expectations that are put on mothers as a result of patriarchy and all of those different pieces that impact why we feel the need to pave the way and carve out this perfect life, when in fact the reality is that our kiddos need what they need and not what we think they need all the time. Certainly there's some non-negotiables that are pretty obvious and science-based, like good nutrition. But there are also, I think all the different micro decisions that are made each day. I think there's a lot of pressure on mothers to create this perfect, fertile environment for children to grow, and it's hard to let go. It's hard to let go.
Mhm.
Full stop.
Yeah.
Of what you think they need, of what society's telling you they need. It's a really difficult, I think, process to go through for sure. And one that brings up a lot of big feelings. And that's
Yeah.
why we often end up in those defensive conversations as opposed to because you saying there's something we need to address with your child, all that is heard is there's something wrong with me and what I'm doing. And even I'm guilty of when my kids are having, we just went on a holiday, my kids complaining and whining, and I'm saying, I worked so hard to give you this holiday. And just because you're whining, I kept having to say to myself, just because they're whining doesn't mean they're not going to appreciate it. Doesn't mean they're not going to enjoy it. They're just hungry and maybe a bit of jealous, you know?
Yep.
Like, get over yourself and stop putting that pressure on them to enjoy every minute.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely. I
because
think
I thought that was going to be a good trip doesn't mean they
yeah,
thought it was gonna be a good trip.
yeah.
And that's
It's very true. There's 2 things here I wanna talk about. So, 1, I wanna go back to what you were talking about that, like, if there's any discussion about my child, it's a reflection of me. And often what we end up having conversations about are, like, the behaviors of the child and what's going on with kids these days,
Mhm, mhm.
without the same kind of lens and empathy for, but how are we supporting parents? Because we always need to go back upstream to figure out what the root causes of things are, right? And we're swimming in the water of intergenerational trauma. We are swimming in the water of our own lived experiences as young humans. And then now we also throw in all of these, AI and technology and social media and all of these influences that had never existed in the parenting conversation before. And I feel like we need to start making more spaces for parents to have this kind of conversation and levels of support that just don't exist because they are trying to navigate things that have never existed. And when we're looking at the cohort of, young humans who were born in 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, they were so impacted by a global epidemic, and we're looking at these young humans, which needs to happen, but we also really need to think about what supports need to be in place for parents so that they can really have these reflective conversations with each other and with their kiddos about this time they're navigating.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. That said, I think every parent, to an extent, every generation of parents goes through that. And I would argue too that under that umbrella of matrescence is you've never been here before as a mom. You've never been a mom with this age child and this age child and whatever. You've never been a mom here before living in this space versus this space. It's all unprecedented. So what is the constant that you can always fall back on? It's you. And when mothering, the focus of mothering becomes you, not the child, that is a huge shift as well.
Mhm.
When you put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then allow the cascading impact to your children, that is really difficult. It's turning the camera around. And we often don't want to do that. We don't even want to look at ourselves in the mirror because we don't even want to look at ourselves in the pictures because we don't always like what we see. But that harsh reality is, I think, the secret sauce and the key to unlocking that process of letting go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like that example that you gave, so this is the other piece I wanted to talk about, like having a trip and saying, I worked so hard for us to have this trip. It is a really great example of how you can have dialogue with your kids that is age appropriate, that respects both people in this conversation,
Mhm,
right? Because you did work really hard to create a vacation experience. And I
mhm,
think that that is one of the places where we haven't given ourselves enough grace to say, so this is how my feelings are feeling hurt right now
mhm,
because I did all of these things for us to have a vacation. And it's okay that you're having this moment too. Like you're hungry, you're bored. We did a thing you didn't really want to do. And so I see you. And that's how we
mhm,
introduce this duality that we were talking about earlier for our kids to realize, oh, you're a human being with emotions too. And I am a human being with emotions. And we just have to figure out how to live together in the same space for this time while we are both having these emotions. And that's a really great way to set up conversation and norms about how we communicate how we're feeling, because one of the things that we're seeing with kiddos, and again it's not necessarily good or bad, but it does give us something to reflect, is that like they are all about, and part of it also, let me say, is developmental, right?
mhm.
Like they,
Yeah,
and with teens, their prefrontal cortex is not online. They are not thinking about anybody else's emotions. Like that's just a neurological imperative. It is
yeah.
what it is. That doesn't mean, however, that we can't still express what my lived experience is of being in their circle at that time. And that is how we learn how to navigate people who have emotions that are different from ours, people who
Mhm.
have lived experiences that are different from ours. And if we don't ever challenge our young humans to see that and to have those experiences, part of me wonders if that's how we have gotten to the place we're in now, where there, these big echo chambers of everybody has to think the way I think, or I don't know how to manage it.
Yeah, that's a really tricky place to be in, right? And I think that what surfaces for me when you say that is the need for validation, validation of our ideas, validation of our experience. Because if I'm not getting that, if you're not agreeing with me on the choices that I'm making, then what I'm doing is probably wrong. And that happens, I think, a lot in motherhood. I allow more screen time than someone else, or the opposite. And then therefore I feel guilty or I feel ashamed that I don't do the same as someone else. And that's really really hard. But it's a reality, and the sooner we can accept, I think that that's a reality that we have to navigate. Those are emotions that we have to acknowledge, then the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashley, this time flew by. I think we could continue to have these conversations for a very long time, because there is just so much nuance when we're looking at both parent and child and not
Mhm.
talking about them as separate things. And I think that's one of the things that our culture really does, is we look at these as two separate entities when they are so deeply enmeshed with each other. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your guidance. And one of the things I'm trying to do is, in this challenging time we're living with, is leaving everybody with a little bit of joy. So what is currently bringing you joy?
I would say something that is bringing me joy. They say try to enjoy every moment of parenting. That's not realistic.
Mhm.
But I am delighting in my children's delight. So whether it's just, they got to choose their ice cream flavor because it's summertime right now and we're doing a lot more fun things. But just seeing them light up at things is bringing me so much joy. And it's slowing down and being present to actually take those moments in is just, yeah, savoring them, I think, really. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you. And we can all take some joy from that in savoring those childlike delights that are good reminders for us as adults to play and to be
Mhm.
present and to find joy in the small things. So thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I really enjoyed being here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for hanging out with me on Transforming 45. If you laughed, nodded, or had an oh wow moment, hit follow and share it with your favorite midlife human. Find me on Instagram at lboat and keep those transformations coming.
Electricast.